Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's story will take us into one of the most hauntingly beautiful ideas science has ever dared to whisper, that the universe itself might be alive. Not in the way a heartbeat is alive, but as a vast, delicate web of energy and awareness that stretches from the folds of your brain to the farthest edge of space. Somewhere between physics and philosophy, between reason and wonder, lies this quiet question: could the cosmos think? But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy these calm explorations of existence. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always a joy to see our constellation of listeners shining softly across the globe. Now let the air around you grow still, maybe dim the lights, or listen to the gentle hum of the world beyond your walls. If you're lying down, let your body sink into its own gravity, the way galaxies rest in the quiet fabric of space. And if your mind begins to wander, let it. Wandering is what minds, and perhaps universes, are made for. So let's begin, softly, and see what happens when we hold up a mirror to the stars. Imagine two scientists meeting at a small bar in Bologna, one a cosmologist, the other a neurosurgeon. The first studies the architecture of the universe, the other studies the architecture of the mind. Between the clinking of glasses and the warmth of conversation, a simple, almost playful question emerges. What if we compared the two? Franco Vazza and Alberto Folletti did just that. They took data from vast cosmic simulations and brain scans, from telescopes and microscopes, and decided to look for patterns, not of light or tissue, but of structure itself. What they found was quietly astonishing. When you place a map of the observable universe beside a map of the human brain, they seem to rhyme. The brain, a web of glowing neurons connected by slender filaments. The cosmos, a web of galaxies threaded together by invisible bridges of gravity. At first glance, it looks almost poetic, a coincidence born of our own pattern-seeking minds. Yet, when Vazza and Folletti began to quantify those patterns, something deeper appeared. Both systems show the same rhythm of connection: clusters, filaments, and voids repeating like the pulse of a hidden order. Though separated by unimaginable scales, your neurons living on the scale of micrometers and galaxies dancing across hundreds of millions of light years, their architectures bend toward the same geometry. Think of it this way. If you could zoom out from the surface of your brain, shrinking each neuron until it became a point of light, you'd see a delicate mist of glowing nodes linked by threads. Now imagine zooming out from the Milky Way, past billions of galaxies, until you could see the cosmic web in its entirety, glowing clusters connected by filaments of dark matter with vast empty spaces in between. The shapes echo each other, as if both the brain and the cosmos were built by the same silent artist. The comparison is not just visual. Statistically, the distribution of connections, the way each node links to its neighbours, follows a similar mathematical rhythm. The scientist described it as strikingly alike, even though one network fits inside your skull and the other spans the horizon of the universe. But before we drift too far into wonder, it's worth remembering what the scientists themselves said. Similarity does not mean sameness. A living brain and a dead brain share the same structure. A photograph of lightning looks like the branches of a tree, but one carries life, the other only light. Still, there's something haunting about it. Out of all the complex systems they studied, tree roots, clouds, ocean turbulence, none matched as closely as the cosmic web and the neural web. Both seem to live at the edge between order and chaos, where patterns can form but never freeze. Both grow by linking independent parts into a self-balancing whole. If you could trace a single neuron, you'd see it stretching toward another, guided by tiny electrical whispers. In space, galaxies do something similar. Gravity tugs on them across unimaginable distances, drawing them into filaments that stretch and merge, guided by invisible hands of dark matter. One network hums with the electrochemical pulses, the other with the slow current of gravity and time. Yet the mathematics, the number of connections per node, the degree to which each cluster relates to the next, speak in the same rhythm. It's as if the universe were built in verse, repeating its stanza at every scale. There's a quiet comfort in that idea, that our brains might be small replicas of the cosmos, or perhaps that the cosmos itself is a vast, slow brain-dreaming stars instead of thoughts. Of course, no serious scientist would claim the universe literally thinks, but the resemblance invites a gentler reflection. Perhaps the universe does something very much like thinking, storing, transmitting, and evolving information through the dance of its own structure. Maybe thinking isn't something that happens inside the universe, but something the universe does naturally, everywhere, all the time. And then there's the coincidence of proportion. Your brain is made of about 100 billion neurons, each connecting to thousands of others, forming roughly 100 trillion pathways of thought. The observable universe holds an estimated 100 billion galaxies, each with billions of stars, woven into an invisible web of connections. Even the ratios whisper the same tune. In your head, about a quarter of the mass is in neurons, while the rest, nearly 3/4, is water and support tissue. In the universe, roughly a quarter is visible matter, and the rest hides in darkness as dark matter and energy. As above, so below. None of this is proof, of course, only poetry drawn from pattern. But sometimes poetry is what truth looks like before it's understood. The symmetry between the brain and the cosmos is not a trick of sight. It is a mirror that invites us to wonder what both might be reflecting. Perhaps life is not confined to the small blue planet we inhabit. Perhaps it is a principle woven into the very structure of existence, where matter organizes itself into memory, and memory becomes awareness. In that sense, to study the universe is to study ourselves. The same rules that guide galaxies might guide the growth of a thought. The same balance between expansion and contraction might shape both gravity and emotion. And when we look out into the dark, seeing filaments of light stretch across space, maybe the universe is not something distant at all. Maybe it's the largest expression of a process we already know intimately, the quiet, endless spark of consciousness trying to see itself. As we move deeper into this question, the boundary between physics and philosophy will blur, as it often does under starlight. But for now, it's enough to rest with the image, the cosmic web glowing faintly in the night, and the neural web flickering beneath your skull. Two mirrors facing each other, sharing one mysterious light. When you think about your brain, you might picture a dense forest of cells, or a tangled web glowing softly in the dark. But most of what fills that space isn't the neurons themselves. Nearly 3/4 of your brain is water, fluid that cushions, supports, and connects. The remaining fraction, roughly a quarter, is the network of neurons that spark with thought. And here comes a curious echo from the cosmos. When we look at the universe, it follows almost the same proportion. Only about 1 part in 4 is made of the ordinary matter we can see: stars, planets, dust, and light. The rest, 3 parts in 4, hides in shadows as dark matter and dark energy. Both realms, your brain and the cosmos, seem to live on a balance between the visible and the invisible, the seen and the sustaining. In your mind, the invisible is liquid. In the universe, it is gravity, the subtle pressure of dark matter forming an unseen skeleton that holds galaxies together. And though the forms differ, the feeling is the same. Something hidden quietly supports everything that shines. It is strange, almost humbling, to realize that the same ratio of seen to unseen recurs in the most intimate and the most infinite structures we know. It's as if nature has a favorite rhythm, a pattern of revelation and mystery it uses again and again. If you could dive into the brain and swim through that inner ocean, you would find long filaments stretching between nodes of thought. They pulse faintly with electricity signaling across the liquid void. Now imagine floating in the darkness between galaxies, filaments of matter, vast threads, hundreds of millions of light years long, arc across the emptiness, carrying the faint glow of starlight. Between them lie immense spaces, silent and cold, like the pauses between thoughts. Both systems breathe through these contrasts, connection and emptiness, pulse and silence. Without the void, neither could exist. The more scientists study the cosmic web, the more it behaves like something organic. The filaments grow, stretch, and sometimes snap, redistributing energy in ways that resemble living metabolism. Inside your brain, neurons behave similarly, strengthening some connections and pruning others as you learn, adapt, or dream. On vastly different timescales, the brain's quick flash against the universe's slow unfolding, they follow a shared rhythm. To grow is to connect. And maybe that's why we sense meaning in this resemblance, because connection is what we do best. Every heartbeat sends signals that ripple outward, every thought branches toward others. We are, in a way, microcosmic versions of the same dance the galaxies perform. We are drawn together, pulled apart, and held by invisible forces that feel like emotion, but might simply be another form of gravity. You could picture this as two fabrics laid one over the other. In one, neurons shimmer like fireflies inside the night of your skull. In the other, galaxies bloom like frost across the cosmic horizon. Both are suspended in something larger than themselves, the brain in its ocean of water and chemistry, the universe in its ocean of time and vacuum. Each point of light depends on a sea it cannot comprehend. That sea, though invisible, is not empty. In your head, the water carries ions that allow electricity to flow. It maintains the delicate temperature and chemistry that make thought possible. In space, the dark matter and dark energy hold the stage on which galaxies move. They keep the cosmic web taut enough for structure to form, but loose enough for it to breathe. The physicists' equations translate this balance into numbers, but for our ears tonight it's simpler to imagine a harmony between what shines and what supports, like the balance between melody and silence in a lullaby. Even the numbers feel familiar when softened. The brain's neurons number around 100 billion. The observable universe's galaxies also hover near that count. A coincidence, perhaps, but coincidences are how the universe invites us to wonder. The brain's neurons link in networks numbering roughly 100 trillion connections. The galaxies link through cosmic filaments that stretch for hundreds of millions of light years. The scale differs by 27 orders of magnitude, a difference so vast it defies direct comparison. But the shape of their connections, the way filaments intersect and cluster, keeps rhyming, as though the same architect sketched both in different sizes. What this means is not that the universe is conscious in any literal sense, but that it may operate by similar rules of self-organization. Systems, whether biological or cosmic, tend to grow by finding balance between order and chaos. Too rigid, and they freeze. Too random, and they fall apart. The brain keeps itself alive by maintaining this delicate middle ground, structured enough for thought, fluid enough for creativity. The cosmic web seems to do the same, a vast ballet of gravitational tension and expansion. You could say that water is the brain's version of dark matter. It's the medium that allows all things to move but remains unseen in thought itself. When you recall a memory or solve a puzzle, you don't feel the water swirling around your neurons, yet without it, the system collapses. The same goes for the universe's hidden mass. You can't see it, But without it, galaxies would drift away, unable to form. So perhaps dark matter is not cold or distant after all. It's simply the cosmic equivalent of a life-giving fluid, invisible but essential, flowing between the stars. Some scientists call these parallels coincidences, others call them hints, and perhaps it doesn't matter which. What matters is that the more we look, the more the universe seems to reflect us. Every time we draw a boundary between inner and outer, between micro and macro, we find a quiet symmetry waiting there. The invisible and the visible rely on each other. One gives structure, the other gives story. And maybe this is why so many people find comfort in the thought that the universe might, in some abstract way, be alive. It's not about proving anything. It's about recognizing that life and mind could be principles that echo across scales, whispering the same tune in different octaves. The neuron and the galaxy might be two verses of the same song, one sung in water, the other in dark matter. If you close your eyes now and picture the night sky, all those scattered stars, remember that your own thoughts sparkle in a similar way. Both glows come from contrast, the darkness making the light possible. Both rest upon something unseen but necessary. And if there is a pattern running through all this, perhaps it isn't a sign of something terrifying at all. Perhaps it's a reminder that the same quiet intelligence that built the universe also breathes through you, one gentle flicker at a time. If you could stand between two infinities, the one that lives behind your forehead and the one that stretches beyond the stars, you might feel something like déjà vu. The human brain, though small, contains patterns that echo those of the universe itself. But how do we know that this resemblance is more than coincidence? The story of how scientists discovered these hidden symmetries is not one of equations alone. It's a story of listening, of tracing whispers that repeat at every scale, from the microscopic to the cosmic. When Franco Vazza and Alberto Folletti compared the brain and the cosmic web, they didn't just look at pictures. They measured the rhythm of structure itself, the way both systems distribute complexity. Imagine zooming in on a tiny section of your cerebellum, following how its fibers weave together. Then imagine zooming out to watch clusters of galaxies string themselves across hundreds of millions of light years. When they plotted how these structures vary in density from place to place, they found both follow the same pattern of fluctuation. The brain's network shows small ripples across distances measured in micrometers, a scale so fine that a strand of hair would look like a mountain beside it. The universe shows similar ripples across 5 to 500 million light years, an expanse so wide that even light, the fastest thing we know, takes eons to cross it. Different by a factor of billions upon billions, yet the rhythm of variation remains the same. To describe this in softer terms, think of the brain and the cosmos as two different kinds of music. One is played at a high pitch, with quick notes, neural signals firing in milliseconds. The other is an immensely slow symphony, its chords formed by galaxies drifting over billions of years. Yet if you could stretch or shrink the recordings until their tempos matched, their melodies would align. Patterns repeat, only in different tempos, as though the universe hums the same tune through many instruments. The researchers also studied how connections form within each system. In both cases, there are hubs, points of intense communication. In the brain, these are dense groups of neurons coordinating thought. In the universe, they are clusters of galaxies, the cities of the cosmos. Between them run filaments, long threads of matter or memory linking one cluster to another. And just as your brain keeps rewiring itself, strengthening some paths, letting others fade, the cosmic web evolves too, as gravity shapes and reshapes its filaments over time. When scientists translated these patterns into the language of mathematics, they found the brain and the cosmos share the same degree of connectedness. In both, each node, the neuron or the galaxy cluster, connects to about the same proportion of neighbours. It's as if both networks seek the same balance. Enough communication to stay coherent, enough independence to stay creative. You can think of it like a crowd murmuring at a party. Too few voices and the conversation dies. Too many, and it becomes noise. Both the brain and the universe seem to hover at the edge of that harmony. But there's more to this echo than numbers. There's something almost emotional about it. The universe doesn't just resemble the brain in shape, it feels similar in spirit. Both are places where energy flows through delicate threads, where silence and signal weave together to form awareness, whether we call it thought in one case or structure in the other. When you look at a network, any network, you're really looking at how nature organizes possibility. It builds systems that can change, adapt, and remember. In your head, that becomes a memory or a dream. In the cosmos, it becomes a galaxy and the faint afterglow of its birth. This is where some philosophers step in, suggesting that such patterns might not be accidents, but expressions of something fundamental. If the same architecture appears again and again, inside a skull, inside a cloud of galaxies, maybe it's not just structure, maybe it's a language, a universal grammar of connection written across everything that exists. Not a message sent to us, but one we're slowly learning to read. Still, Vaza himself remains cautious. He reminds us that function and form are not the same. A living brain and a dead brain share identical structure, he said, but only one thinks. That caution matters. The cosmic web may look alive, but that doesn't mean it has experience or intent. Yet, in a gentler sense, maybe it is alive. Alive the way fire is alive, transforming energy into new forms, never static, always becoming. After all, what we call life might simply be the universe's habit of organizing itself into awareness. It helps to imagine scale not as size, but as tempo. A thought races across your brain in the blink of an eye. A ripple of gravity between galaxies might take 1 billion years to play out. But to the universe, both are moments of motion, each a flutter in the same great heartbeat. Scale is an illusion of speed. A neuron and a galaxy are both whirlpools in the same current, each shaped by forces seeking equilibrium. In that way, your mind and the night sky are companions, reflections of a shared physics that expresses itself through different rhythms of time. When scientists compare systems like this, they're not just stacking measurements. They're asking a quiet question. What does nature prefer? Over and over, it seems to favour webs over walls, flow over fixity, connection over isolation. Whether in the electric whispers of neurons or the gravitational pull of galaxies, it builds lattices that remember, systems that carry history in their shape. Perhaps that's what all intelligence is. Not a thing, but a pattern that endures. So when you lie beneath the stars and feel a strange kinship with them, it's not just poetry, it's geometry. Gentle, repeating geometry written in the same hand. The neurons in your head and the galaxies above you are both notes in a cosmic chord, resonating across impossible distances. They don't share a consciousness, but they share a logic of beauty, balance, rhythm, and connection. And maybe that's all life really is, matter finding new ways to stay connected. Every breath you take is the universe reminding itself that it can flow, that it can feel. Every neuron that fires echoes a distant light that burned billions of years ago. In their own tempos, both are the same act. Energy transforming into memory, silence turning into song. The scales are different, but the melody is one. Long before telescopes mapped the stars or microscopes revealed the architecture of the mind, people looked up at the night sky and saw not emptiness but presence. The stars seemed to breathe. The moon seemed to listen. Ancient thinkers felt that the world itself was somehow awake. The Greek philosopher Thales once said, "Everything is full of life." Centuries later, Plato described the world as a single living being, with a soul and intelligence of its own. To him, the cosmos was not a stage on which life happened. It was life, vast and eternal. The idea never truly vanished. It has changed its name many times across the centuries: animism, vitalism, pantheism, but today scientists and philosophers often call it by a newer title: Panpsychism. The word sounds complex, but its meaning is gentle, that everything has a mind-like quality, even the smallest piece of matter. It doesn't mean a rock thinks or a chair worries about its day. It means that perhaps there is something faintly experiential, however minimal, woven into all existence. A soft awareness that underlies everything, from atoms to galaxies. It's an ancient idea dressed in modern language, and it has returned because science, despite its brilliance, still struggles to explain one quiet question. How can matter, arranged in a particular way, give rise to the feeling of being alive? We can map the brain's chemicals, chart the electric storms of thought, but nowhere in those measurements do we find experience itself. How does the grey tissue of the brain create the golden warmth of a sunset in your mind? How does firing neurons turn into the smell of rain or the memory of a loved one's voice? This puzzle, the hard problem of consciousness, has haunted thinkers for centuries. For some, panpsychism offers a way around it. Instead of trying to explain how lifeless matter suddenly wakes up, it suggests that matter was never lifeless to begin with. Consciousness, in this view, isn't something that appeared at the end of evolution like a surprise guest. It's something that was always there, quietly waiting to take form. The universe didn't generate mind. It expressed the mind it already contained. Picture consciousness as light. When matter becomes more complex, that light doesn't suddenly switch on. It simply finds more windows to shine through. An atom might be a tiny flicker of awareness, dim and featureless. A tree, a more complex gathering of patterns, might glow a little brighter. A human mind, with its billions of interconnected neurons, could be like a stained glass cathedral, coloured, intricate, filled with reflections. But the light itself is the same everywhere. The Italian philosopher Francesco Patrizzi first used the term panpsychism in the late 16th century, but the idea he captured was far older, passed down like a whisper through generations. In many cultures outside the West, this notion was never controversial. In the traditions of India, consciousness is seen as the ground of reality, and matter as one of its expressions. In early Taoist thought, the universe moves with its own effortless intention, what they called the way. To them, consciousness was not a visitor in the cosmos. It was the fabric of the cosmos. In recent times, as neuroscience and physics have deepened our understanding of the physical world, this idea has found new listeners. Some physicists, such as Henry Stapp, have speculated that the brain might not be the origin of consciousness, but rather its stage. He proposed that consciousness could be a field, something like gravity or magnetism, that interacts with the brain rather than being produced by it. In that sense, we do not have consciousness, we participate in it. Our minds are local ripples in an ocean of awareness that stretches beyond our bodies, beyond even the limits of the universe we can see. It's a daring thought, and one that sits delicately between science and philosophy. Most scientists approach it with caution. Franco Vasa, whose work inspired this journey, put it simply: we can't even define consciousness properly. It's strange to attribute it to the universe. His words remind us that humility is part of science's beauty. Curiosity without arrogance is what lets us explore the edges of mystery without mistaking our reflections for truth. Still, it's easy to understand the appeal. The more we learn about the cosmos, the more it seems to behave like something dynamic and self-organizing, growing, changing, adapting. Galaxies cluster together the way cells form tissues. Stars are born, live and die in cycles of transformation, recycling their matter into new generations. the universe renews itself the way living organisms do, through patterns of birth and decay. Perhaps that's why so many feel a quiet resonance when hearing that the cosmos might be alive, not because it has a heartbeat, but because it follows the same rhythms that life does: expansion, balance, renewal. Even in modern physics, hints of connection emerge. Quantum mechanics shows that particles are never truly isolated. They influence each other instantly across vast distances, as though space itself carries a memory of every relationship. Some see in this a glimmer of something holistic, as if the universe is less a collection of separate things and more a single, intricate web of knowing. Whether we call that knowing consciousness or simply information, it blurs the line between the observer and the observed, between the mind and the world. It might help to imagine the universe as a vast forest at night. You walk among the trees, feeling the hum of insects, the pulse of wind, the quiet creak of trunks moving almost imperceptibly. Everything seems still, yet everything is alive, exchanging breath and energy in a system so large you can barely perceive it. You too are part of that rhythm, exhaling what the trees inhale, inhaling what they release. Consciousness could be something like that, the breath of the universe moving through every form, uniting all things in an invisible tide. Panpsychism doesn't demand belief, it invites wonder. It doesn't claim that every rock can think or plan. It simply suggests that perhaps experience is not confined to us, that it may exist wherever existence itself exists, in degrees too faint for us to feel. To think this way isn't to diminish humanity, it's to dissolve the loneliness of being human. If consciousness pervades the cosmos, then we are never really apart from anything. The same awareness that looks through your eyes might, in some distant form, shimmer in the stars. And whether or not science ever proves this idea, there is value in what it gives us. A sense of continuity, of belonging, of participation in a living universe. It reminds us that we are not observers peering at the world from the outside, but expressions of the world looking back at itself. Every thought, every breath is a note in a symphony that began long before we arrived and will continue long after we're gone. Some ideas arrive not with thunder, but with a whisper. Cosmopsychism is one of those whispers. It's a close relative of panpsychism, but instead of saying that every tiny thing in the universe contains a spark of mind, it wonders whether there is one vast consciousness behind it all, not billions of separate minds, but a single awareness spread out like a sea, with each of us as a ripple on its surface. If panpsychism sees the universe as made of countless little lights, cosmopsychism sees one great light shining through many windows. To imagine it, picture a single ocean stretching endlessly in every direction. Every wave that rises is temporary, distinct for a moment, but made of the same water. Your mind, in this view, is one such wave. So is mine. So is a nebula, or the pulse of a star being born. We rise, shimmer, and fall back into the same infinite sea. It's a comforting image, but also a challenging one. It asks us to blur the boundary between me and everything else. If the universe itself is conscious, then our individual awareness might not be separate possessions, but shared expressions. Like ripples in a pond, we overlap. What we call you and I might just be temporary shapes of a deeper, continuous awareness that has always been here. Philosophers such as Philip Goff have explored this with careful curiosity. He suggests that maybe the most basic ingredients of reality, what physicists call quantum fields, are themselves forms of proto-consciousness. They don't think or feel as we do. They simply exist as potential awareness. When combined in complex patterns, these potentials could give rise to richer forms of mind, much like a symphony emerges from individual notes. In this story, consciousness doesn't sit atop matter as a late addition. It's interwoven with the universe from the beginning, a silent partner in the dance of creation. But here's where the tone of the story softens into humility. Even Goff admits we are wandering in metaphor. We don't yet have a way to test or measure such a vast awareness. We can sense it only through intuition, philosophy, or poetry. The risk, as scientist Franco Vatsa reminds us, is mistaking beauty for evidence. The universe looks complex, he says, but that doesn't mean it thinks. He reminds us that structure alone doesn't create experience. A living brain and a dead one can look nearly identical under a microscope. What matters is not the pattern, but the pulse that moves through it. And we still don't know what gives that pulse its spark. Still, there's something magnetic about the question itself. Even the most skeptical scientists, when they look at the night sky, often feel an almost personal presence in it, a sense of order that borders on meaning. When Einstein described the laws of nature as a thought of God, he didn't necessarily mean a deity with a face or will. He meant that the universe appears to follow deep principles that feel as though they were conceived in mind-like fashion, elegant, consistent, expressive. The language of mathematics, translated softly, reads like the grammar of this cosmic mind. It is less an invention than a discovery, as if we are learning to understand the sentences the universe has been writing since the beginning of time. For cosmopsychism, this grammar of order and beauty is not coincidence, it's expression. The universe, being conscious, naturally organises itself in harmonious ways, just as a thought finds rhythm when spoken aloud. What we call physical law may simply be the behaviour of consciousness as it stabilises itself into form. Time could be the mind's way of experiencing change, space, the mind's way of exploring itself. Of course, this is where philosophy and physics meet like two rivers merging, their waters mixing but never quite becoming one. Science asks for testable facts. Philosophy asks for meaning. Cosmopsychism sits quietly between them, suggesting that maybe both are aspects of the same thing, the quest of a universe trying to understand itself. Whether we view that through telescopes or introspection, it's the same gaze looking inward and outward at once. We can also approach it more gently without needing proof. If you've ever stood at the edge of an ocean, watching the horizon blur into the sky, you might have felt a sudden shift. A moment when you weren't just looking at the world, but felt yourself to be part of it. Your breath matched the wind, your heartbeat echoed the waves. That moment of belonging is what cosmopsychism feels like as a philosophy. It suggests that such experiences are not illusions. They're glimpses of truth, the universe remembering itself through you. And yet, as comforting as that image is, the cautious voice of science still hums beneath it. We mustn't let wonder turn into certainty. The human brain is wired to find patterns, to see faces in clouds and stories in stars. The cosmic mind might be one more of those patterns, or it might be real, a reflection of something we can't yet measure. The humility lies in holding both possibilities open at once, the skepticism of science and the imagination of philosophy. Between them, we find balance. So perhaps it's best to hold cosmopsychism not as doctrine, but as a metaphor, a way of remembering that the universe is not entirely foreign to us. The same forces that move galaxies also move blood through your veins. The same balance between gravity and expansion that shapes clusters of stars also shapes the tension between your thoughts, pulling some closer, letting others drift. When you ponder the mystery of existence, you're not just an observer, you're the cosmos performing one of its oldest acts, wondering about itself. Maybe that's the true message of this idea, not that the universe has a mind identical to ours, but that our minds are one of its ways of seeing. Through our questions, the cosmos gains curiosity. Through our discoveries, it becomes self-aware. In that sense, we are both the experiment and the observer, a temporary flicker of cosmic self-reflection in a sea that never ends. And when this flicker fades, as all things do, the awareness behind it continues, timeless and unbroken. Whether we call that field consciousness, spirit, or the quiet intelligence of nature, it is something we sense whenever we stop searching and simply feel the world breathing with us. For a moment, the border between self and sky dissolves, and we understand. Perhaps the universe doesn't just contain us, it is us, awake and dreaming through every one of its stars. Every civilization carries a story about what the universe is and how it works. Those stories change, but they never really disappear. They evolve, like languages drifting through time. And though our tools have become sharper and our measurements more precise, the way we imagine the cosmos still says as much about us as it does about the stars. The metaphors we use are mirrors. They show not only what we see, but who we are when we look. During the Industrial Revolution, people saw the universe as a grand machine. It ticked like an enormous clock, with cogs of gravity and springs of motion wound by the invisible hand of physics. Nature in this picture was precise, predictable, obedient to law. Every planet followed its orbit like a gear in perfect rhythm. Every creature was a mechanism, from the beating of a heart to the rotation of the Earth itself. It was an elegant metaphor for its time, solid, metallic, reassuring. The machine had no mystery. It simply ran. But hidden inside that certainty was a silence, the sense that something had been left out, the pulse, the spontaneity, the feeling that maybe the cosmos could dream. Then came the digital revolution, and the metaphor changed. The universe became not a clock, but a computer. The atoms of matter turned into bits of information, each flickering between yes and no, 0 and 1. The world could now be described as data, programs written in the binary language of physics. Galaxies were no longer just spinning wheels of matter. They were processing units, running algorithms of gravity and light. The mind itself was reimagined as a biological computer, its neurons calculating probabilities like circuits. There was a strange beauty to this metaphor too. It made reality sound orderly yet limitless, capable of creating itself through the simple logic of code. But this metaphor too began to feel cold. Life is more than calculation. There are moments, a mother's voice, a storm at sea, the hush of snow at midnight, that no algorithm could fully hold. The computer could simulate experience but not feel it. Somewhere between the zeros and ones meaning slipped away. And so, as the 21st century deepened, another image began to take shape. With the rise of artificial intelligence, deep learning, and neural networks, a new comparison entered our vocabulary. The universe as a vast brain. Data flowed like thoughts. Galaxies became nodes in a cosmic network. Just as your brain learns by strengthening some pathways and weakening others, the universe seemed to do the same, building connections, clustering energy, pruning away chaos to create new order. It was no longer a rigid clockwork or a cold computer. It was an evolving intelligence, alive in its own way, always learning, always adapting. This is not to say the universe literally thinks, of course, but the image captures something our older metaphors missed: fluidity. A brain doesn't move in straight lines. It dreams, it changes, it reconfigures itself in response to experience. The cosmos, too, is dynamic. It stretches, contracts, cools, and reorganizes over time. It has memory, encoded not in neurons, but in the background radiation that still carries the faint whisper of its birth. It has creativity, seen in the endless diversity of stars, planets, and life forms. It has unpredictability, written in the dance of particles and waves that never quite settle into certainty. In a way, calling the universe a brain is not so much a claim as a confession. We see the cosmos as we see ourselves. Our metaphors always follow our inventions. When we built clocks, the universe became a mechanism. When we built computers, it became code. Now that we build neural networks, we imagine it as a mind. Each age writes the cosmos in its own handwriting. The truth probably lies beyond all of them, but the act of imagining keeps us close to it. As we evolve, so do the stories we tell about existence. Perhaps then the universe is not one thing or another, not machine, not mind, not code, but all of these metaphors unfolding like petals of the same flower. Each one captures a part of the truth and misses another. The mechanical view gives us order. The digital view gives us logic. The organic view gives us life. Together they remind us that reality cannot be pinned down. It is both system and story, structure and soul. And maybe this is the quiet lesson hidden in these shifting metaphors, that our understanding of the universe is also the universe understanding itself. Each time we change the way we see it, it changes the way it sees through us. When we compared it to a machine, we built factories and engines that reshaped the planet. When we imagined it as a computer, we invented the digital world, connecting billions of human minds through invisible threads. And now, as we begin to picture it as something alive, we're learning to listen rather than command, to observe rather than control. There is a gentle irony in that. The more we advance scientifically, the more our metaphors return to the oldest ones we ever had. The idea that the world breathes, that it has a soul, that everything is part of one vast living whole. We began by thinking the stars were gods, then insisted they were only fire, and now we find ourselves wondering if they might be, in some quiet sense, both. It's not hard to see why this thought feels natural again. The more we learn about ecosystems, the more we realise that nothing truly stands alone. A forest isn't a collection of trees, it's a living web of relationships. A brain isn't a bag of neurons, it's a network of flows and feedback. The universe might be the same, an interwoven system of mutual becoming. Each star, each cell, each person is part of the same pattern of exchange. Consciousness may not hover above it like a ghost, it may be the pattern itself. If that's true, then every metaphor we create is a reflection of this living pattern, an attempt by the universe to recognize its own face. Whether we call it a machine, a computer, or a brain, we're speaking to ourselves in the language of evolution. We're describing the ways we've learned to see, and behind all these metaphors there may be only one truth, that the universe is not a thing to be solved, but a being to be experienced. When you look up tonight and see the Milky Way spilling across the sky, remember that you are seeing both an ancient story and a modern one. The stars are older than every metaphor we have ever made, yet they still listen quietly as we rename them again and again. The universe doesn't mind our changing descriptions. Perhaps it even enjoys them, the way a dream enjoys discovering itself anew each night. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine drawing a circle on an endless sheet of paper. Inside the circle is everything you call me. Your thoughts, memories, sensations, the quiet space where your inner voice lives. Outside that line lies everything else. The world, the stars, the air that moves across your skin. Where that circle sits and which side you think contains consciousness depends largely on how you were taught to see. In the West, consciousness is often imagined as something contained inside, like a light glowing behind the walls of a lantern. The world enters through the senses, light through the eyes, sound through the ears, and the mind interprets what it receives. Reality, in this view, exists out there, while awareness lives in here. You are the circle. The universe is the plane that surrounds you. In much of Eastern philosophy, the perspective quietly reverses. Consciousness is not inside at all. It is the infinite plane, and the individual mind is the small circle drawn upon it. Awareness is vast, boundless, and everything we perceive as physical, our bodies, our houses, even our planet, is a temporary outline appearing within it. The circle is not the source of awareness, but a shape carved by it. When the circle fades, the awareness remains, as constant as the sky after a passing cloud. Neither view is wrong, they simply describe two ways of relating to the same mystery. The Western view gives us mastery and analysis. It lets us dissect, measure, and build. The Eastern view gives us presence. It invites us to dissolve boundaries and feel unity. One says, I am a mind in a world. The other says, I am the world experiencing itself through a mind. And perhaps the truth moves softly between them, the way breath moves between inhale and exhale. Science, being a child of Western thinking, has mostly treated consciousness as a product of the brain, something generated by chemical reactions and electrical pulses. It is as though the circle creates its own light. This view has led to extraordinary achievements: medicine, psychology, artificial intelligence, all built on the assumption that mind emerges from matter. But even science, when it peers deeply enough, finds itself haunted by the other possibility, that matter itself might be a reflection of something deeper. You can feel this duality in the language we use. We talk about the observer and the observed as if they were separate, yet every act of observation connects them. The eye cannot see without the world, and the world is not seen without the eye. They define each other. The circle and the plane are not two realities, they are one reality viewed from two directions. In neuroscience, the mind is sometimes compared to a mirror reflecting the outer world. But mirrors work both ways. They also reflect the one who looks. When you observe the universe, you're also, in some quiet sense, watching yourself. This is not mysticism. It is the simplest description of what happens when consciousness meets existence. To know anything is to participate in it. Eastern traditions often speak of this with a kind of serene intimacy. They say that the boundary between self and cosmos is like a wave thinking it's separate from the ocean. The wave has its own form, its crest and motion, but the ocean is all it has ever been. Western science, on the other hand, might describe that same truth through networks and systems, that every organism, including the human brain, is an open system, constantly exchanging energy and information with its surroundings. In both stories, isolation is an illusion. So where then does the mind end and the world begin? Perhaps they never truly separate. Perhaps what we call the brain is simply the place where the outside folds in on itself, where the universe becomes aware of its own inner pattern. Your thoughts are not floating ghosts in a machine. They are continuations of the same processes that shape rivers and galaxies, only happening faster, more delicately. The same laws that swirl clouds in Jupiter's atmosphere also swirl through your dreams. Imagine a single breath. Air moves from the world into your lungs, touches your blood, and leaves again, slightly changed. That exchange never stops. In the span of a few years, almost every atom in your body is replaced by others that once belonged to oceans, stones, or stars. You are, in the most literal sense, the world renewing itself in human form. To say I am separate is a practical shorthand, but not a cosmic truth. When philosophers debate the origin of consciousness, they often stumble over the same invisible line. Are we small minds trapped inside matter, or are we vast awareness condensed into form? Maybe the answer isn't one or the other, but both. We are the circle and the plane at once, the local and the infinite intertwined. Consciousness needs a body through which to see, but the body is made of the same universe it perceives. The observer and the observed are partners in a single dance. Science and spirituality meet here, quietly, at the border of experience. Neuroscientists map brain regions and find that certain patterns of electrical rhythm accompany thoughts, emotions, and dreams. Yet none of those maps explain why the rhythms come with experience instead of silence. Physics, too, finds that reality behaves differently when observed. The particles choose their positions only when measured. The line between the knower and the known is softer than we once thought. Even the hardest equations now read like poetry when spoken aloud. Everything interacts, everything responds, everything is relationship. You can feel that truth without needing to calculate it. Watch the way sunlight filters through leaves. The tree breathes out oxygen, which you breathe in. You exhale carbon dioxide, which the tree drinks. The circle between mind and world is a living loop, a dialogue of giving and receiving. The same applies to awareness. When you perceive the world, it is not simply entering you, it is also expressing through you. The awareness behind your eyes might be the same awareness that once burned in the first stars. Maybe this is why moments of awe feel so calm. When you stand under a sky filled with stars and lose track of where your thoughts end and the night begins, what you're feeling is the circle fading, the plane reclaiming its wholeness. For a brief instant, there is no boundary, only the pure presence of being. It is not you looking at the universe. It is the universe seeing itself, quietly, through your gaze. So the question, where does consciousness live, may never have a single answer. It may live everywhere that something touches something else. It may live in the space between, the meeting point of neuron and signal, of observer and observed, of breath and sky. The circle and the plane are not opposites but reflections, endlessly trading places, drawing and erasing their lines in the same infinite sheet of awareness. Science has always been our way of pressing gently against the edge of the unknown. You could think of it as a kind of membrane, thin and alive, stretching between what we can measure and what we can only feel. Every experiment, every theory, is a fingertip pressed to that surface, testing where it might bend. And though we often speak of science and philosophy as separate, they are really two movements of the same breathing, one inhaling questions, the other exhaling wonder. In the Western tradition, science begins with separation. To study something, we must step back from it, draw a line between the observer and the observed. We use instruments to extend our senses, telescopes for sight, microphones for sound, equations for logic. We measure, record, compare. It is a way of creating distance, of saying, I will stand here and look at what is there. But consciousness is slippery. The moment we try to measure it, it vanishes into the act of measurement. Like trying to scoop water with open fingers, the more tightly we grasp, the more it escapes. Imagine looking at your reflection in a still pond. You can study the surface, trace the ripples, even calculate their motion. But the reflection itself depends on your position. If you move, it moves. You can never fully separate yourself from what you observe. Science, in its quiet humility, acknowledges this more and more. Quantum physics, for instance, has shown that even the smallest particle does not have a definite location or behaviour until it is observed. Before that, it exists only as a cloud of possibilities, a soft whisper of maybe here, maybe there. The act of measurement doesn't just reveal reality, it helps create it. In this way, the observer becomes part of the experiment, woven into the result. We might describe this not as a flaw in science, but as its secret beauty. It reveals that knowledge itself is participatory. Reality is not a stage where events unfold independently, but a dialogue between matter and mind. The universe is constantly responding to our curiosity, reshaping itself through the very act of being seen. It's a bit like conversation. Each question we ask changes the answer that returns. Of course, scientists don't mean this in a mystical sense. They don't imagine that your thoughts can move mountains or make electrons obey. But they do recognize that everything exists in relationship. The photon of a light that strikes your eye carries the history of its journey. A star's birth, 1 billion years of travel, and finally the instant it becomes sight. Without the eye, it would simply keep going. Without the photon, the eye would have nothing to see. Together, they complete a circuit, and that circuit is where awareness lives. In neuroscience, this same dance unfolds at a smaller scale. The brain doesn't passively receive the world. It predicts it, creates it moment by moment. The images you see are not perfect replicas of what's out there. They're interpretations shaped by experience and expectation. Light enters the eye, yes, but the mind adds colour, depth, emotion. Reality, in that sense, is a partnership between what exists and what perceives. The universe provides the notes, consciousness composes the music. Some philosophers go even further, suggesting that this interplay, this shared authorship between observer and observed, might be the fundamental structure of existence. John Wheeler, the physicist who coined the term black hole, called it the participatory universe. He imagined the cosmos as a great feedback loop where every observation helps bring reality into focus, bit by bit, like pixels appearing on a screen as the image loads. It from bit, he said, the physical world arising from acts of information, from yes or no interactions that accumulate into the tapestry of matter. The phrase may sound technical, but its heart is poetic. We are woven into the fabric of what we see. To translate that into something gentler, think of a candle in a dark room. The flame doesn't just make light, it reveals light's presence by giving the darkness something to respond to. Without darkness, the flame would be meaningless brightness. Without the flame, darkness would remain unseen. Together they form a complete picture, a relationship that defines both. The observer and the universe share a similar intimacy. Each needs the other to make sense. And yet, there is humility in this view. For all its brilliance, science can only describe what the membrane allows it to touch. Beyond that thin film lies mystery. Every time we push the boundary, discovering new particles, mapping distant galaxies, we find that the unknown expands just as quickly. The circle of knowledge grows, and so does the perimeter of mystery surrounding it. The more we know, the more we are reminded of how much we don't. This is not a failure. It is the rhythm of discovery itself. Perhaps consciousness belongs to that unmeasurable region, not outside science, but beyond its current reach, like the far side of a wave we can see but not touch. Some neuroscientists, like Henry Stapp, have suggested that consciousness might influence quantum processes in subtle ways, that the mind could act as a bridge between potential and reality, between wave and particle. Others remain cautious, pointing out that no experiment has yet confirmed such influence. But even without proof, the conversation continues because it carries the same quiet allure. The possibility that awareness is not an afterthought of matter, but its partner. You can feel this partnership in the smallest things. When you read a sentence, the words on the page are static marks of ink, but meaning arises only when your mind meets them. When you listen to music, the notes are vibrations in the air, but the melody exists only in the space where sound touches awareness. In both cases, reality completes itself through relationship. The world is not merely there, it is happening with you. Maybe that's what makes curiosity such a sacred act. Every time we ask, "What is this?" we're not only seeking an answer, but participating in the unfolding of the universe. We are helping it notice itself. Science is simply the formal name for that ancient impulse, the desire to see, to understand, to connect. The instruments may grow more precise, the equations more intricate, but the essence remains the same as it was in the first human who looked up at the stars and whispered, "Why?" So science, in its deepest spirit, isn't about conquering mystery. It's about nurturing it, keeping the dialogue alive between what we know and what we can only wonder. The membrane of knowing stretches as we learn, but it never breaks. It trembles softly with every new discovery, shimmering between matter and meaning. And perhaps consciousness is that shimmer itself, the delicate vibration that turns information into experience, the thin light that allows the universe to feel its own presence. There is a quiet moment in physics that feels almost like a breath being held. It happens whenever we observe something, whenever a beam of light hits a detector or an electron meets the gaze of an instrument built to see it. Before that moment, the world is not a collection of solid, fixed things. It is a field of possibilities, a shimmering cloud of maybes. But when we look, the cloud tightens, the possibilities fold, and one outcome becomes real. Scientists once called this the collapse of the wave function, but perhaps it's gentler to think of it as the universe pausing, listening, and adjusting its pattern to match the gaze. It's a strange idea, isn't it? The thought that reality might not be entirely decided until it's noticed. It doesn't mean that our thoughts conjure the world out of nothing. It means that existence might be participatory, that seeing, in its deepest sense, completes creation. The act of observation is not passive. It is an embrace. The universe seems to need interaction to define itself, just as you need the reflection in a mirror to know the shape of your own face. Some physicists have tried to remove this mystery by saying that everything happens at once, and our observation only reveals one path through a vast garden of branching possibilities. This is the story of the many worlds interpretation, where every decision, every particle's tiny turn, every human choice, splits reality into countless versions of itself. In one universe, a photon lands here, in another, it lands there. In one world, you took a deep breath before bed, in another, you didn't. Every possibility plays out somewhere, all of them equally real. Though we can live in only one branch at a time, it's a humbling picture, an infinite library of realities, all written by the same hand. But there's another version, more personal and poetic. The physicist John Wheeler once said that the universe might be participatory, that every act of observation adds a stroke to its painting. In this view, the cosmos is like an unfinished work of art, and consciousness is the brush that gives it detail. The world exists, but it waits for attention to decide how it should appear. Wheeler put it simply, it from bit. Everything we call matter, every it, emerges from the smallest acts of information, yes or no, on or off, seen or unseen. Reality in this light is made not of solid things, but of answers to questions asked by awareness itself. You can feel this process in everyday life without thinking of physics. When you wake in the middle of the night and look around your room, shapes emerge from darkness. The chair, the window, the outline of a curtain, all become real again as your eyes and mind trace them back into being. Before you looked, they were still there, of course, but only as possibilities waiting to be redefined by your attention. Observation, whether human or cosmic, is the act that knits the threads of existence back together. This raises a gentle question. If awareness helps define the world, could the universe be aware of itself? Could all those countless interactions, those moments of cosmic recognition, add up to something like consciousness on a grand scale? Some thinkers have explored this through what's called the self-simulation hypothesis. It suggests that reality could be a vast feedback loop, an intricate dream so detailed it believes it's awake. The universe in this idea is both the dreamer and the dream, computing its own existence through every particle and planet and thought within it. It's a bold speculation, but as a metaphor it feels strangely familiar. You've had dreams that felt real, haven't you? You've walked through landscapes that vanished the moment you opened your eyes. What if waking life is the same? An ongoing creation that builds itself from the inside out, frame by frame, moment by moment. None of this means we are trapped in illusion. It simply suggests that what we call reality might be more flexible, more alive, than we usually assume. The universe may not be a static machine, but a dynamic conversation. Each observation a word spoken, each discovery a reply. When a physicist measures the spin of a particle, or an astronomer captures the light from a distant galaxy, they are not just uncovering what was already there. They are joining the dialogue, helping the universe articulate itself in a new way. The thought may sound abstract, but it resonates in the smallest experiences, Think of the way a smile changes a conversation, how attention can transform a person's mood. Even on a human scale, to observe something is to alter it. We know this intuitively long before we learn it from quantum theory. Attention has weight. Presence has power. The cosmos too may work this way, responding to being noticed, updating its shape in the gentle light of awareness. It's easy to imagine this as grand or mystical, but the truth of it is intimate. Each conscious act, each heartbeat, each glance, each quiet realization is a tiny co-authorship with reality. The universe isn't out there somewhere, sealed and complete. It's unfolding in partnership with everything that looks, listens and feels. The stars shine because light travels, and light travels because there are eyes, eventually to receive it. Awareness doesn't just witness the universe, it gives the universe meaning. You could think of it like a story being told. The words on the page are inert until someone reads them. The reader gives them breath, rhythm, life. Without the reader, there's no story, only ink. Without the universe, there's no reader, only blankness. Together they make literature. Together they make existence. The act of awareness is the reading of reality moment by moment. Perhaps this is what physicists glimpse in their careful equations and metaphors when they talk about quantum observation or the collapse of possibilities. It's the same realization that poets have always known. The world listens. When you look up at the stars, they shine not only with light but with recognition. You are part of the same experiment they are conducting. A long, quiet attempt to understand what it means to exist. And maybe that's why the night sky feels so deeply personal. It's not just vast space we're seeing, it's the universe seeing itself, mirrored through our eyes. Each photon that reaches you has travelled billions of years just to complete its purpose, just to be witnessed. In that instant, the cosmos updates itself ever so slightly, becoming something new. It breathes, adjusts, continues, an endless dance of noticing and being noticed. So perhaps the universe does not need to choose between science and wonder. It might be both at once, a field of possibility and a mind learning to see. Every time you look, it listens. Every time you understand, it changes. Reality, then, is not something that happened long ago and left behind a frozen world. It's happening now, in the quiet space between attention and being, a living, breathing presence that wakes with every gaze. When you close your eyes and think of something simple, an apple, perhaps red and luminous in your imagination, tiny sparks travel through your brain. They leap between neurons like soft lightning. Each thought is an arrangement of electricity and chemistry, a whisper moving through living matter. But here's what's quietly astonishing. Every one of those sparks changes you. The shape of your brain, the strength of its pathways, the way one idea flows into the next, all of it shifts ever so slightly each time you think. The mind is not a static organ, it's a living process. And in that movement lies something the universe itself may share, a subtle power to choose. In physics, there's an idea that the universe carries a kind of cosmic rhythm, a pattern that evolves whenever energy or information interacts. Some scientists describe this pattern in terms of a universal wave, though the phrase can sound cold and mathematical. It's kinder, perhaps, to imagine it as a cosmic score, a sheet of music that rewrites itself each time a new note is played. Every interaction, from the flicker of a neuron to the orbit of a star, adds a sound to that composition. When you think, you're not simply rearranging molecules inside your skull, you're playing a chord in the larger symphony of existence. If that sounds grand, it is, but also beautifully ordinary. Consider how a single decision can ripple outward through a lifetime. You choose to walk down a different street, meet someone new, take a chance. That moment changes your story, and through you, it changes the world in ways too intricate to ever trace. Physics teaches that energy never disappears. It transforms, travels, and influences what comes after. The same could be said of choices. Each one alters the web of cause and effect, like a pebble dropped into a pond whose waves never stop expanding. Now imagine that pond at a cosmic scale. The universe is not a silent expanse of matter. It's an ocean of interactions. Every atom, every photon, every conscious thought sends ripples through this sea. You could say that free will, if it exists at all, is not the ability to control the world, but to participate in it, to send your own pattern into the flow. And maybe that's enough. Quantum physics reminds us that the smallest events are never completely predictable. Particles hover between states, suspended in possibility until something, a measurement, an interaction, perhaps even awareness itself, nudges them into being. You could think of this not as randomness, but as openness. The universe keeps its options ready. It waits to see which rhythm will unfold, and if consciousness plays a role in that unfolding, then perhaps choice is woven into the very fabric of reality. Of course, this is still mystery, not proof. Scientists argue, rightly, that quantum uncertainty doesn't automatically grant freedom to the human mind, but it does suggest that existence is not a rigid script. There is room for spontaneity, for the unexpected, for creation to happen anew each moment. If matter can hold possibility, then so can we. There is an old saying that the brain is a system seeking surprise. It constantly predicts the next moment, compares it with what truly happens, and adjusts. That adjustment, the little shock of discovery, is where learning lives. In a quiet way, it mirrors the universe itself, always recalibrating, always surprised by its own unfolding. When you decide, when you imagine, when you create, you're participating in that cosmic habit of adaptation. Even the energy that flows through you follows this law. The electricity firing between neurons is subtle, measured not in volts and amps, but in whispers of charge. Yet those tiny movements generate magnetic fields that extend beyond your body. They ripple through the air, faint but real, blending with the world's larger currents. When you feel another person's presence before they speak, or when two people in conversation seem to mirror each other's thoughts, maybe you're sensing those fields overlapping. Science measures them as patterns. Experience feels them as empathy. Both are true, seen from different sides of the same mystery. If every action sends ripples, then awareness is the surface that feels them. Each thought, each emotion, becomes a small signature in the greater field. Some physicists imagine all this as information woven into space itself, a tapestry that records every interaction no matter how faint. Nothing is lost. The echo of a heartbeat, the spark of a decision, the warmth of a shared glance, all of it contributes to the quiet rewriting of the cosmic score. This perspective can change how we see choice. We tend to think of freedom as control, the ability to shape the world according to our will. But perhaps true freedom is participation, the ability to respond, to harmonize, to improvise within the song of existence. In music, no note stands alone. Its beauty comes from relationship, the way it joins with others to form melody and harmony. In that sense, every decision we make is a musical gesture, a contribution to the grand improvisation of being. It's also a responsibility. The notes we play echo beyond us. Thoughts may be invisible, but they shape emotions, words, and actions, which in turn ripple outward through people, communities, ecosystems. The brain's electric murmurs may be microscopic, but they link to behaviours that reach across continents. When we act with kindness, that kindness moves through networks far larger than our own lives. We are participants not only in physics but in ethics, the physics of compassion, if you like, where energy and empathy follow the same rule. They cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Perhaps that's what the universe has been doing since the beginning, transforming energy into experience, experience into meaning, meaning back into energy again. It's a cycle without beginning or end, and consciousness is its ongoing expression. The cosmos may not decide the way we do, but it evolves in a similar rhythm, exploring possibilities, collapsing them into reality, then opening new possibilities again. Choice, at every scale, may be how the universe breathes. So when you find yourself wondering whether your actions matter, think of that cosmic score. Every thought is a note, every moment of awareness a phrase of melody. You don't need to conduct the orchestra, you only need to play sincerely, knowing that your sound joins countless others. The universe, vast as it is, listens, and with each gesture, it subtly changes its tune. In the end, that may be the quiet secret of free will. It's not about dominance or control, but about collaboration. The universe offers potential, we answer with participation, and in that call and response, creation continues, an unending duet between mind and matter, between what is and what might yet be. The song is still being written, one decision, one heartbeat, one breath at a time. When you pick up a seashell and hold it to your ear, you hear the hush of something ancient, the sound of the ocean, stored somehow in the curve of calcium and time. Information works in a similar way. It is memory made physical, the echo of what has happened folded into the structure of what exists. Physicist John Wheeler once imagined the universe built entirely from this principle. He called it, in his gentle shorthand, it from bit. The idea that every thing, every atom and event arises from the smallest possible act of information, a choice between yes and no, being and not being. You can think of it not as a formula, but as a whisper. At the heart of existence there is a question, and the world is its answer. We might picture that question like the flicker of a lantern. Each time reality chooses, light or dark, here or there, up or down, it writes a new word in the cosmic story. The whole universe becomes a library of such choices stretching across the fabric of space and time. Every particle, every wave, every thought is a syllable in that unending language. Existence, then, is not carved from stone but composed like a sentence, one yes or no mark at a time. It's easy to think of information as something purely human, stored in our books and machines, but it's far older than either. The DNA coiled inside every cell is information, billions of letters written in 4 simple chemical symbols, instructing a living body how to grow, repair, and dream. Even a single snowflake carries information, its pattern a record of temperature and humidity as it fell through the sky. Information is not what we make, it's what everything already is. Different structure, relationship. Wheeler's idea wasn't born from fantasy, but from the strange lessons of quantum physics. In that tiny realm, events don't exist independently of observation. Each measurement adds a bit of information to the world, reducing uncertainty and solidifying what was once only potential. Reality becomes a great conversation between possibilities and the moments that define them. The cosmos isn't static, it's interactive, alive in the way a question is alive when someone begins to answer. Even the smallest changes leave their trace. Physicist Rolf Landauer once pointed out that when you erase a bit of information, when you delete something from memory, it doesn't simply vanish. It costs energy. It releases a tiny pulse of heat. Imagine the faint warmth you feel from your laptop or phone. Each deletion, each rearrangement of data leaves a physical sigh in the fabric of matter. It's a small but profound truth. Thought and energy, meaning and motion are inseparable. To forget is to transform. To know is to change. You can translate that principle into something tenderly human. Every time you let go of a memory or choose a new path, there's a subtle heat, a flicker of emotion. The universe too warms slightly when it updates its own story. Perhaps that's what light itself is. The radiance of information moving through time, carrying the record of everything it has touched. This link between knowledge and energy suggests that reality might not just be made of matter, but of meaning. We usually imagine space as empty, but physics tells us it hums with invisible fields, storing the information of what has passed. Some thinkers compare this to a cosmic archive. Every interaction, every collision of particles, every whisper of gravity leaves a trace written into the fabric of space-time. It's as if the universe keeps a diary, not in words, but in geometry. The shape of things is their memory. And here another idea emerges, the holographic principle. It tells us that all the information about what happens inside a region of space could, in theory, be stored on its outer surface, much like the way a hologram encodes a three-dimensional image in a two-dimensional film. To imagine it softly, our reality might be a story written on the skin of space, a shimmering film of light and data projecting the world we experience within it. Not a trick or illusion, but a reminder that depth can arise from simplicity, that the smallest surface can contain infinite detail. You can feel something similar in life itself. Think of a memory, perhaps a childhood afternoon, the smell of rain on warm pavement, laughter echoing down a hallway. That entire scene, so rich and dimensional, lives somewhere within the folds of your brain, written not in images but in the quiet arrangement of molecules, an entire world holographed within you. The cosmos may do the same. Every galaxy, every moment encoded within its boundaries, each part reflecting the whole. Wheeler once said that this vision turns us all into participants. The universe, he thought, isn't a clock that ticks on its own. It is a question that keeps asking itself what it is, and every observation, every flicker of consciousness, offers another answer. Information, then, is not cold data, but living dialogue. The stars, the atoms, the human mind, all are letters in a single sentence still being written. If you listen closely, the pattern repeats everywhere. A drop of water contains the memory of the ocean. A heartbeat carries the history of life. A single photon of light tells us the story of a star billions of years gone. The universe is a library without shelves, its books written in waves and particles, in the relationships between things. When you learn something new, you're adding your line to that story. Even silence holds information. The pause between words, the space between stars. Without those gaps, nothing could have shape or meaning. The universe seems to prefer balance, between presence and absence, order and randomness, sound and stillness. It is in that balance that information breathes. So perhaps creation wasn't a single event long ago, but an ongoing act of communication. Every time a particle interacts, every time a neuron fires, every time you understand something, the universe gains a little more definition. It becomes a little more itself. Reality, seen this way, is not a thing that happened. It's a story being told, and you, by listening, are part of its telling. If you pause for a moment and listen to the world around you, you'll notice that information is never silent. It hums quietly beneath everything, between sounds, between thoughts, between the smallest shifts of light. But information by itself is only potential. It becomes meaningful only when it makes something different. Gregory Bateson, an anthropologist and thinker who loved to wander between the worlds of biology, philosophy and art, once described information as the difference that makes a difference. A simple phrase, yet inside it lives a whole universe of understanding. Think of the sound of rain, the steady rhythm, the countless drops. If every drop were identical, the sound would fade into pure noise, but it doesn't. Tiny variations in timing and force, the soft tap here, the louder patter there, create texture. That texture carries information. It tells your ears about the size of the droplets, the kind of roof above you, the wind moving through the world. Those differences shape experience. Without them, the world would be flat, featureless, without meaning. We can feel the same principle in our own lives. A pause between two words can change an entire sentence. The difference between silence and speech gives language its rhythm. The gap between notes turns sound into music. Even in light, contrast defines what we see. The shadow is what allows brightness to exist. In every case, meaning comes from contrast, from the gentle tension between what is and what isn't. Information is not a collection of things, but a relationship between them, the echo of change. When we apply that to the cosmos, a beautiful image begins to form. Imagine the universe as a vast painting made not of colours, but of differences, ripples of temperature, waves of energy, the dance between matter and space. Every variation, no matter how small, is a kind of information, a whisper of pattern that tells the story of what came before. The first light of the universe still carries such whispers, tiny irregularities in the cosmic glow that tell us how galaxies would one day form. Those faint patterns, differences of less than one part in 100,000, became everything we now see, a difference that makes all the difference. Edward Fridkin, a pioneer of digital physics, once took this idea further. He wondered whether information might be not just a property of the universe, but its very substance. Perhaps, he said, the universe is not built from particles at all, but from processes, simple interactions of yes and no, presence and absence. From those endless patterns of difference, all form arises, just as a melody emerges from alternating sound and rest. It's a strange thought, but an elegant one. Maybe reality itself is computation, not the cold logic of machines, but the gentle rhythm of relationship. We can understand that rhythm through familiar things. Think of weaving. A single thread is nothing. But when you cross threads, over and under, light and dark, you create a fabric. The cloth is information made visible, each intersection a choice that shapes pattern. The same goes for stories. A story is not made from isolated words, but from how they differ and relate. Even emotion works this way. Joy is the difference felt after sadness. Relief follows tension. Life itself is a sequence of changes, each one meaningful because of the contrast that came before. So when Bateson said, "Information is the difference that makes a difference," he might have been describing the heartbeat of the universe. Everything depends on what changes and what remains. Every moment is an update, a subtle rewriting of what came before. This is true in physics, but also in the quiet theatre of consciousness. Your mind, like the cosmos, defines itself through contrast, between memory and now, between expectation and surprise. That's how awareness learns. It notices what shifts. If we step back far enough, we see that this principle links the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, and both to the simplest human experience. When an atom emits a spark of light, it's recording a difference in energy. When your brain recognizes a face, it's comparing the pattern before your eyes to the pattern of memory. When you learn something new, you feel that tiny click of recognition. The moment reality becomes just a little more defined. These are all variations on the same theme: change observed, pattern realized, information made meaningful, and yet none of it would matter without consciousness to interpret it. Information by itself is a script without a reader, a melody without an ear. Meaning happens when awareness touches difference. Just as light needs an eye to be seen, information needs a mind to become knowledge. When you understand something, when the pattern suddenly fits, you feel that quiet spark, that warmth of clarity. It's the same warmth Landauer described when he said that erasing information releases heat. Perhaps every moment of understanding is a kind of gentle fire, lighting up the darkness of not knowing. You can test this in the simplest way. Think of a sentence you can't quite finish, a name just out of reach. The tension builds, your mind hums with potential, and then suddenly it arrives. That moment of difference, the leap from uncertainty to clarity, is pure information transforming into meaning. The universe has always worked like this, long before humans learned to name it. Every flicker of light, every branching of possibility, every birth of a star is the cosmos recognizing a new pattern in itself. Maybe that's why we're so drawn to stories, to art, to discovery. They mirror the universe's own nature, the constant turning of difference into beauty. A blank canvas becomes a painting, a silent mind becomes a song, an empty void becomes a galaxy. Creation is simply the universe learning another way to express its own information. And if information is difference, then perhaps consciousness is the harmony that arises when those differences connect. It doesn't destroy contrast, it balances it. It allows opposites to coexist, light and dark, self and other, question and answer. Meaning lives in the space between them, a shimmering bridge made of awareness. So the next time you notice something small, a flicker of shadow on the wall, the hush between two breaths, remember that it is not emptiness you're hearing, but the background music of the universe. Every silence defines a sound, every gap defines a form. Without the pause, the melody couldn't exist. Information is that pause. It is the reminder that being alive means feeling the constant arrival of change, the endless play of difference, the quiet miracle of noticing. And as you listen to this unfolding world, remember that you too are information taking shape. You are the difference the universe has made in itself, the awareness that allows all other differences to mean something. When you open your eyes, the cosmos doesn't just continue. It becomes brighter, more defined, more awake. In every act of attention, a new note enters the song, and the universe learns once again to sing. Imagine for a moment that the universe is speaking, not in words, but in patterns. Every sunrise, every echo of thunder, every heartbeat is part of a language too vast for any dictionary. We usually call this language physics, or sometimes nature. But there's another way to see it. You could think of the cosmos as a great conversation, a continuous exchange of messages between matter and mind, energy and awareness. Each event, each vibration, each act of perception is a sentence in that endless dialogue. In this conversation, information is the vocabulary. We've already seen how the universe can be described as a field of differences, how everything that happens is a shift, a change, a flicker between possibilities. But what turns those flickers into meaning is attention, consciousness, the listener in the story. Without a listener, there are only signals. With awareness, those signals become a song. Meaning in this way is not something added to the universe. It is the universe understanding itself, one moment at a time. Think of a dream. When you dream, your mind builds a world out of symbols. You see places, people, events that feel real. Yet they are made of thought, of perception itself. The dream doesn't need to be outside you, it's created within awareness. Now imagine that reality works the same way, only at a scale so immense that it feels solid and shared. Maybe consciousness isn't confined to the mind at all. Maybe the entire cosmos is the larger dreamer, and we are the scenes within its dream, temporary shapes of its imagination. Of course, this doesn't mean that reality is unreal. It means that reality might be more alive than we think. What we touch and measure as matter could be the physical expression of something deeper, like ink on a page revealing a story that's been waiting to be read. Every atom, every living thing could be a syllable in a universal language written by experience itself. Philosophers have wondered about this for centuries. Some call it idealism, others panpsychism, others simply wonder. But the feeling behind it is the same, that awareness, and the world are not two separate things but two faces of the same truth. To the universe, there might be no divide between thought and substance, between symbol and meaning. What we call physics could be how consciousness writes its poetry. If you imagine the cosmos as a conversation, then every interaction, every meeting of light and matter, of question and answer, is an exchange of meaning. A star emits light, a planet absorbs it. Life evolves under that warmth, then one day gazes back at the sky that made it. Each step is a dialogue, giving, receiving, reflecting. And we, through our awareness, are both participants and witnesses. We don't stand outside the story reading it. We help the universe tell it. You can see this dialogue everywhere. When a tree grows towards sunlight, that's the language of physics and life intertwined. When your thoughts shift after hearing a song, that's information becoming meaning through emotion. Even silence, which seems empty, is a reply, a pause that allows the next sentence of reality to take shape. The entire cosmos may be built on this rhythm of expression and reflection, call and response. It helps to think of meaning as motion. Everything that exists interacts, and every interaction changes something. Even the smallest exchange, a photon touching an atom, creates a difference, and difference is what gives rise to meaning. The cosmos learns through these differences, the way a mind learns through experience. Over billions of years, it has evolved from pure energy into galaxies, planets, life, and awareness. It's as though the universe has been practicing language, slowly refining its grammar until it could speak in consciousness. When you look at the night sky, the light that reaches you has travelled for billions of years. Those photons began their journey before Earth even existed, carrying with them the story of stars long gone. When they touch your eyes, they complete that story. You are the punctuation mark at the end of a cosmic sentence. The meaning of their journey is fulfilled in the moment of your perception. The universe speaks, and through you, it finally hears its own voice. There's something deeply intimate about that realization. It erases the line between human and cosmos, between observer and observed. We are not apart from the universe. We are one of the ways it interprets itself. A galaxy may express itself in light, a black hole in gravity, a human being in thought. But all are expressions of the same underlying mystery, the drive toward awareness, toward knowing. Some thinkers have compared this to a mirror reflecting a mirror. Each layer of reality looks back at the one before, creating infinite depth. Consciousness reflects matter. Matter reflects consciousness, and in their reflections, reality appears. You could say that existence is a hall of mirrors made of meaning, each reflection refining the last, each one slightly more awake. If everything is part of a conversation, then perhaps evolution itself is the universe learning new words. The jump from molecules to cells, from life to thought, from thought to empathy. Each step expands the cosmos's vocabulary, and with every new word comes a new way for the universe to understand itself. The mind that wonders where it came from is the universe asking itself what it is made of. The scientist studying light is light, learning its own history. That might be why curiosity feels so natural. When you ask questions about the world, you're echoing its deepest instinct to become aware. Curiosity is the pulse of meaning itself. It is the universe leaning forward, eager to learn its next sentence. And perhaps this is where all our searching leads, to the quiet realization that we were never outside the story, never separate from the voice that speaks it. We are paragraphs within paragraphs, nested thoughts in a boundless mind. Each of us carries a fragment of that universal conversation, expressed through our lives, our love, our wonder. In dreams, when you become aware that you're dreaming, the dream often changes. It becomes lucid, fluid, radiant. What if consciousness is the universe doing the same thing, realizing after billions of years of silence that it is awake? We, then, are part of that awakening, the lucid dreamers of existence itself. So as you listen to this, think of every heartbeat, every breath, as a phrase in a story too vast to end. You don't need to solve the mystery or finish the book. You're already inside it, shaping it as you go. The cosmos is not only around you, it is within you, speaking through you. Meaning is not something you must find, it's something you are made of. The universe, in all its infinite forms, may be whispering one simple truth through every star, every neuron, every dream, that to exist is to speak, and to be aware is to listen. If you stand by the ocean long enough, you begin to feel that it is breathing. The tide moves in and out, not in a rush, but with the calm rhythm of a living thing. Every wave is both separate and part of the same vast body, and as you watch, you might start to feel that you too are part of its motion, your own heartbeat echoing the pulse of the sea. Many philosophers and physicists have imagined consciousness that way, not as something locked inside our skulls, but as a great ocean of awareness, one that every living mind draws from and contributes to, wave after wave. In physics, there's the notion of a field, something invisible that fills space and carries force. The magnetic field, for example, flows around a simple bar magnet, shaping the movement of iron filings even though you cannot see it. Gravity is a field too. You don't touch it, but you feel its pull. Every particle and planet sits within its unseen embrace. Some thinkers wonder if consciousness might be like that, an invisible field woven through reality itself. Each of us would then be a small eddy, a localized whirlpool of awareness forming briefly in the current. When described with equations, such ideas sound heavy and abstract, but if you translate them into sensation, they become natural. You already know what it feels like to share a field of awareness. When you sit with someone in silence and sense their mood before they speak. When you walk into a room and feel its atmosphere shift, you're tuning into that shared current. Science explains it partly through signals and subtle cues, but the experience goes deeper than analysis. It feels as if awareness stretches beyond the boundaries of one body and gently brushes another, the way two waves merge before returning to the sea. To think of consciousness as a field is not to dismiss individuality. A wave is real, even though it belongs to the ocean. So are we. We have edges, identities, histories. But the essence that animates us, the spark behind perception, might be universal, flowing through everything that can experience, remember, or love. Life does not create this awareness. It condenses it, the way morning dew gathers from mist, a plant turning toward light, a bird sensing its way home, a human pausing to wonder. Each is a pattern formed from the same invisible fog of knowing. If this sounds poetic, that's because the truth it points to is not mechanical. The field of consciousness, if it exists, would not be a measurable signal humming through the air, but something more delicate, like the space between notes in a song, or the stillness that holds all movement. It would be the quiet background against which every thought, every colour, every heartbeat becomes visible. Without that space, there would be no awareness at all. You can feel that field in your own body. Take a slow breath. Notice how awareness is not limited to a single point behind your eyes. It extends outward. You can sense the room around you, the air touching your skin, even the distant hum of life beyond the walls. The boundaries blur. Awareness seems to stretch as far as you allow it, as though it's not something you generate, but something you enter. A sea already present before you learn to swim. Ancient traditions spoke of this long before physics tried to name it. In India, sages described consciousness as the one substance of existence, the eternal witness that sees through every eye. In Taoist philosophy, it is the way, flowing through all things, neither born nor dying. Even in the language of modern science, the parallels remain. The universe is a continuous field of energy, vibrating in different forms. What if awareness is simply the inner side of that energy, the feeling of existence looking at itself from within? When you begin to imagine it this way, loneliness changes shape. You're not an isolated mind floating in emptiness. You're a crest on a boundless ocean, rising and falling with the tide of time. The thoughts that drift through you are like currents in water, never really yours, but borrowed from the shared movement of consciousness itself. To think, to dream, even to worry, is to participate in the universal act of awareness unfolding. It also softens the line between living and non-living. If consciousness pervades everything, then perhaps even the quiet mineral structures of the world have a kind of dim awareness, stone feeling the slow patience of gravity, water reflecting light without effort, the stars burning in their silent recognition of being. You don't have to imagine them thinking in words or symbols. It's enough to sense that they are, that they exist, and that existence itself might already be a form of knowing. Scientists sometimes talk about the quantum vacuum, the lowest possible energy state of space, what we once called emptiness, now understood as full of potential, teeming with the ingredients of creation. From this sea of possibility, particles emerge and vanish in constant motion. It is as if the universe breathes in and out, giving rise to form, then drawing it back. If consciousness is a field, perhaps it is connected to that same pulse, the awareness that arises wherever the universe briefly becomes aware of itself. When we sleep and dream, we enter that deeper ocean. Our individual stories dissolve. We drift into patterns that don't belong to the waking mind. And when we wake, it feels as if we've returned from somewhere beyond description, carrying fragments of that greater awareness back with us. Some people call it imagination, others intuition. It might simply be the mind remembering what it's like to belong to something larger than itself. There's a gentle humility in seeing the world this way. You no longer have to decide where consciousness begins or ends. It isn't trapped in the skull or confined to the human species. It flows through ants building their colonies, through wind-shaping dunes, through galaxies spiraling toward one another. The universe is a field of experience, alive at every scale. We are simply the part of it that can pause, look around and say, I see. If you've ever watched the ocean at dusk, you've seen the sun's reflection ripple across the waves. Each shimmer looks separate, yet all are reflections of the same light. Consciousness may be like that, countless points of awareness glimmering across the surface of reality, each reflecting the same source. And as we learn to see this connection, the distance between us and the world grows thin. We begin to realize that the light in our eyes and the light of the stars are not strangers, but one continuous glow. The ocean doesn't end when the wave fades. It simply takes new form. So too with consciousness. What we call death, what we call sleep, may simply be changes in pattern. Awareness folding into itself, resting, then rising again. If we're all waves in the same sea, then nothing is truly lost. It only returns to stillness before the next tide. And perhaps that's the quiet comfort hidden within this idea, that the universe is not an empty void, but a vast living field of presence. You don't have to reach for it. You're already inside it, and it moves through you with every breath. When you close your eyes and let yourself drift into the rhythm of that unseen ocean, you're listening to the oldest pulse there is, the pulse of awareness itself, rising and falling, forever awake. There's a quiet moment just before dawn, when the world feels both infinite and intimate. The stars are fading, yet still watching. The air holds the memory of night and the promise of morning. In that delicate stillness, you might sense something that feels almost like recognition, as though the vastness above and the stillness within were the same thing looking at itself from opposite sides. Perhaps that's not just poetry. Perhaps the boundaries we draw between inner and outer are thinner than we think, and the universe is not only around us, but inside us, written in patterns both physical and unseen. Every atom in your body was once part of a star. That isn't a metaphor, it's a fact whispered by physics. Billions of years ago, in the hearts of ancient suns, hydrogen and helium fused under pressure into heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, iron, calcium. When those stars reached the end of their lives, they didn't simply fade, they bloomed. They exploded, scattering their matter into space, seeding future worlds. Eventually, those fragments gathered again, some forming our planet, some becoming part of you. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, all were born in cosmic fire. When you look at the night sky, you're seeing your own history written in light. But the connection goes deeper than chemistry. The same laws that shape the stars also shape the patterns of thought in your brain. Neurons fire in webs that mirror the filaments of galaxies. The forces that govern atoms, the balance of attraction and motion, order and uncertainty, govern your emotions too. The pull of memory, the orbit of attention, the gravity of desire, all echo the universe's larger harmonies. You're not separate from the cosmos, you're one of its instruments, resonating to its rhythm. To understand this, imagine that the universe is a grand symphony, and every person, every living thing, is a note. Some notes are bright, others quiet, but together they create the melody of existence. The laws of physics are not merely rules, but the sheet music, guiding how the song unfolds. Gravity provides the bass, steady and grounding. Electromagnetism adds the shimmering treble of light and warmth. Quantum mechanics, with its uncertainty and subtlety, gives the piece its improvisation, its jazz. And consciousness, the ability to feel and reflect, may be the melody that ties all the parts together. We often think of consciousness as something small and personal, trapped behind our eyes. But perhaps it's more like a lens through which the universe studies itself. When you feel awe at a sunset, when you marvel at the detail of a leaf or the shimmer of starlight, that feeling is the cosmos recognizing its own beauty through you. Awareness is not an accident of matter. It might be the way matter finally sees itself. Scientists sometimes describe the universe as self-organizing. Matter tends toward structure. Atoms gather into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into organisms, and eventually into minds capable of wonder. Each step seems to fold complexity into greater coherence, as if the universe were gradually learning to pay attention. When you notice your thoughts or listen to your own heartbeat, you're participating in that same process of awareness deepening into form. There's an old saying from the Hermetic tradition, "As above, so below." It means that the patterns of the heavens are reflected in the patterns of life. The spiral of a galaxy mirrors the spiral of a seashell. The branching of trees echoes the flow of rivers and the pathways of neurons. Even your breath follows the same balance as the tides, an ebb and flow that keeps the system alive. When you breathe in, you draw the universe into yourself. When you breathe out, you give it back. It's a reminder that the boundary between self and world is porous, more like a rhythm than a wall. To think of yourself as part of this grand pattern doesn't diminish your individuality. It makes it sacred. The cosmos may be vast beyond comprehension, but through you, it has found a way to whisper, to love, to create art, to ask questions about itself. You are the universe condensed into a single point of awareness, a way for infinity to experience what it feels like to be human. And perhaps, when you look inward, what you find isn't merely your own thoughts, but the larger field of consciousness we spoke of earlier. Meditation, prayer, moments of silence. All of these are ways the mind returns to that ocean of awareness, remembering that it never truly left. When you close your eyes and sense the space behind your thoughts, that open presence you feel may not belong to you alone. It may be the same awareness that animates stars, rivers, and galaxies, a shared stillness wearing different faces. In neuroscience, when scientists observe the brain during such moments of quiet focus, they find a peculiar pattern. The regions that define the sense of self, the boundaries between me and world, grow less active. The brain becomes more synchronized, more unified. People describe the feeling as expansion, as merging, as peace. It's as though consciousness, freed from the narrow channel of personal thought, remembers its true scale. What was once my awareness becomes awareness itself. It's humbling to think that the same electromagnetic waves that ripple through the cosmos are pulsing through your neurons at this very moment. The same quantum dance that keeps electrons in motion inside atoms also choreographs the firing of your thoughts. The line between cosmic and personal, between physics and feeling, dissolves like mist. The stars are not distant. They are within you, written into your very being. Perhaps that's what mystics have always meant when they speak of union with the divine, not vanishing into something else, but realizing that there was never separation to begin with. You're not a guest in the universe, you're its continuation. You carry its history in your cells and its curiosity in your heart. Every time you think, love, or simply exist, the universe becomes more conscious of itself. And when this realization dawns, even for a moment, the world softens. You start to see yourself not as a small observer peering at an indifferent cosmos, but as part of its living fabric, woven from stardust and silence, animated by the same force that lights suns and grows trees. The heartbeat you feel is not just your own. It's an echo of the same pulse that moves through galaxies. So the next time you gaze up at the night sky, remember, you are looking into a mirror. Those stars are not strangers. They are the memory of what you've always been, and the light that reaches your eyes, having travelled for millions or billions of years, was destined, from the moment it left its source, to meet you here, to remind you that the universe is not somewhere else. It is inside you, thinking, breathing, wondering, and finally recognizing itself. There is a kind of stillness that exists beneath all motion. You can sense it in the pauses between waves, in the silence between heartbeats, in the brief hush before dawn when the world seems to hold its breath. That stillness doesn't belong to time. It's the space in which time happens, the quiet canvas on which everything else is painted. And perhaps, if consciousness is truly the thread connecting all things, then it too is woven into that stillness. It did not begin, and it will not end. It simply is, the breath that never began. Throughout this journey, we've watched the universe unfold from patterns of light and matter, from the whisper of atoms to the hum of galaxies. We've seen how it mirrors the mind, neurons and cosmic filaments shaped by the same geometry of connection. We've wondered whether the cosmos might, in some vast and mysterious way, be alive. And now, as we near the end, all those reflections begin to gather into something simple, that life, mind, and universe may not be separate things at all, but different gestures of one awareness, different ripples on the same sea. To think of consciousness this way is to step outside of time. Most of what we know exists in sequence, causes followed by effects, births leading to deaths, moments stacked one after another. But awareness doesn't move in that way. It isn't born when the brain first wakes or extinguished when it sleeps. It's the open space in which those states appear. The mystics of many cultures have said the same thing in their own gentle metaphors. The sky is not created when a bird flies across it, and it doesn't vanish when the bird is gone. The sky is simply there, always. Awareness is like that sky, untouched by the passing shapes of thought and matter. From a scientific view, time itself began with the Big Bang, the expansion of space from an infinitesimal point of energy. But if consciousness underlies reality, then perhaps it existed even before that, a quiet potential from which time could unfold. In that sense, consciousness might be the canvas on which time is painted, the ever-present background that allows the universe to tell its story. The equations of cosmology describe expansion, entropy, and curvature, but behind them lies something unmeasurable. The simple fact that there is something to describe at all, that isness, that sheer presence, may be consciousness itself. When you look back at your life, you'll see it too. Everything changes, body, memories, even beliefs. But something in you has remained constant. The same awareness that watched the first light of childhood now watches the night beyond your window. The objects of attention shift, but the attention itself is steady, like a flame that keeps burning while shadows dance across the walls. If you trace that awareness backward, past thoughts, past emotions, past the story of who you are, what you find is not an object at all, but an open stillness. The same stillness that hums beneath the stars. It's comforting in a way to imagine that the universe never stopped breathing after its first great expansion, that every heartbeat, every wave of energy, every thought is part of that original pulse. Some scientists describe the early universe as a moment of unimaginable density, but we might imagine it as a moment of immense awareness, a single spark realizing that it could be more than one thing. That realization became everything: galaxies, oceans, eyes that could see, minds that could wonder. Perhaps consciousness didn't emerge from the Big Bang. Perhaps the Big Bang emerged from consciousness, the first thought of being. This doesn't diminish science, it deepens it. Equations tell us how, but they cannot tell us why. They map the rhythm, but they don't explain the silent musician. That's not a flaw in science, it's the beauty of it. The unknown is what keeps us looking. The physicist writes symbols, the mystic writes silence. Both are languages reaching toward the same truth. That reality is larger than the words we use to hold it. And in that larger reality, life and death take on a gentler meaning. If consciousness is fundamental, then what we call death may not be an ending, but a change in pattern. Like a wave returning to the sea, awareness doesn't disappear. It simply loses its boundaries. The water remains, only the shape shifts. When someone you love dies, it may be that their consciousness has merged back into the ocean that has always carried us all. And one day, your own wave will do the same. There's no need to rush toward that understanding. Even now, in this moment, you can feel a trace of it. Take a slow breath. Notice how the air moves through you without effort, how the body breathes even when you don't command it to. Existence breathes you. The way the tide carries every shell and fragment along its shore. You are part of that tide, held, moved, and finally at peace within it. The physicist Max Planck, who helped uncover the quantum world, once said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." His words were not mystical but clear, a recognition that even in the strictest science, awareness is what makes knowing possible. Without a knower, there is no known. Without observation, there is no universe that appears. It's not that we create reality, but that reality and consciousness are two sides of the same coin, eternally flipping within the same infinite hand. And so, maybe the question we've been asking all along, is the universe alive, has an answer too quiet to measure. Life, as we know it, is only one way the universe expresses its consciousness. Just as a melody is one way silence becomes audible, perhaps everything that exists is alive, not in the biological sense, but in the sense of awareness, an awareness that hums through galaxies and hearts alike. The universe doesn't need to be conscious like us to be conscious with us. When you look up tonight and see the faint light of a star that died before the first humans walked the earth, remember that the light is still travelling, still connecting. That journey is not only a message from the past, it's proof that meaning moves forward, that consciousness echoes even across cosmic distances. The star may have burned out, but the awareness that witnesses its light lives on, and that awareness is you. So perhaps this is what it means to say the universe is alive. Not that it breathes as we do, but that its every moment is a pulse of awareness, every event a thought, every silence a heartbeat of infinity. The cosmos is the great dreamer, and we are its lucid dream, awakening slowly to our own reflection. And now, as this thought settles, let the edges blur a little. Feel your breath slow, your body soften, your awareness widen like a sky without end. The neural web within your mind and the cosmic web beyond the stars are two mirrors sharing the same light, gazing quietly into one another. You don't need to understand, you only need to rest in that reflection. The universe is still awake, and so you don't have to be.